Solar paint. I do a terrible job of optimizing the SEO by mentioning the name of the product a whole lot. So Glossier, solar paint, solar paint, solar paint. What is up, guys? Welcome back. So Glossier came out with a bronzer and I bought all of them. I have here all 4 shades of the new Glossier solar paint. We have Volt, Flair, Ray, and Heat. And I bought all of them because I wanted to know, not just was there one for me, but is there one ostensibly for everybody, and or does maybe one shade function better for me than it's necessarily designed to? In my experience with blush, a lot of times things are more saturated than you would think of as something that would be intended for someone who's super pale, but it's more about the undertones. And as long as the formula allows me to sheer it out, I can wear it better than something necessarily that's like kind of white backed. And white backed meaning like it's got a lot of opacity because it's like backed with white pigment. And it also means it doesn't translate as well on other like deep dark skin tones. So that said, I'm pretty sure Flair, the fairest one, would be the one intended for me. And the darkest one, I think, is Volt, and you can see by just the cap shades. Flair is gonna be supposedly like light neutral. I'll look at all the descriptions online. And Ray is gonna be more golden. Heat is when we start getting a little bit into the red undertones, but it does look a little bit cooler. And then you end up with Volt, which starts to go into that burgundy undertone. I'm gonna swatch them all. We're gonna talk through it. I'm gonna talk about the claims, gonna talk about the price. I'm going to compare them to other bronzers of their ilk in my collection. That's why I keep such an encyclopedic collection, is to be able to do that. And we're gonna put them on my face. I think I'm gonna start by swatching them actually on my face and like spreading them out, making that easy, and then I'll wipe that off and actually try and apply them in a way that I think will like look good, in a wearable way. And then we'll move into my final thoughts because this is not first impression. So let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, starting with Flair. Ooh, this is the one that's basically intended for me. Oh, and low key, high key, if you're looking at my hands and you're like, khaki, that's gross. I had a gold paint pen explode on me this morning, so I can't get it out from under my nails or off of my fingers. It has, I think, like an oil-based thing to it, very different from the acrylic that is like stuck to my fingernails. So please don't judge me. It just is what it is. So that was Flair. So then we have Ray. And this is the component. It looks like it's gonna open up and have like a squirt container, but actually you open it up and it's got a BB doe foot. So here we have Ray. And I would argue that not only is it deeper in shade, but it's richer in pigmentation as well than Flair. I'm not gonna be able to remember them. This one's Heat. Let's just do this so that it's more even. And they're all kind of hitting the light the same way or similarly. This one goes a little more translucent, interestingly. I feel like it's not quite as densely pigmented. Maybe I'm just making that up. Maybe they're all the same amount of pigmentation. Maybe I should shake them. I'm not sure. And to the best of my knowledge and my experience with them, they don't go like the lid stars where they go like totally waterproof. So I was able to like move them around after the fact. And then that is Volt. And as you can see, it is a deep red-based bronzer shade, almost to the point of going a little bit plummy. So those are the shades. We have, again, Flair, Ray, Heat, Volt. Flair, Ray, Heat, Volt. Heat, is it shifting? I don't know, they kind of all probably shift a little bit, right? Yeah, this one wants to shift a little more champagne. This one shifts a little bit more gold. And this one also shifts a little bit kind of like pinky rose. So it's like not wanting to go too warm. And then that one also has almost like a pinky shift to it. Could be making that up. Sometimes I read between the lines a little too much, but let's go ahead and clean this off. So you guys might have seen on my Instagram, I said we were having a bronzer malfunction, and that was because day before yesterday, I tried to put like all of them on at once. I was like, I'm gonna do just like a reverse bronzer thing, and that proved to be too much bronzer, I think. So what ended up happening was I did a reverse bronzer thing where I applied it directly to the skin and then I went in with concealer afterwards. And I found that like being out in the world, it moved around quite a bit. And I ended up with a lot of patching and I could like lay my finger on it and it would patch pretty, like you could invite it to patch off very, very easily. So I recognize that that was an extreme amount of bronzer for most people and even for me really. So I'm gonna try and do something a little bit more realistic today. You know what? I'm gonna use the Glossier skin tint just so that I can see like exactly how they would intend for me to use it, like with their products. I have here the Glossier Perfecting Skin Tint in G11. Again, please do not judge all the paint underneath my fingernails. Every time I use the Glossier skin tint, I think, why don't I use the Glossier skin tint more often? It's very, very good. It doesn't have much of a dry down though, so that's the only thing. I find that, you know, it's not as long wearing as some of the more sophisticated, higher tech formulas that have come out since then. So let's get on with this. I have tried this with my fingers with a brush. I have not used a sponge, but I like never really use a sponge. Glossier is very much a fingers oriented type makeup line, you know? It's kind of supposed to, I feel like that's always been the idea. Like, you know, they give you a pot of the stretch concealer. They don't give it to you, fam. They sell it to you. But, you know, that's it blended out with my fingers, but I think I'm gonna use a brush just because it's more what I'm comfortable with. So let's find a brush that I, you know, genuinely love. I'm gonna just go ahead and do. See, it's just gonna leave a little more product on the face. Feather a little bit more easily. And again, this is the shade that's pretty much intended for me, Flair, just because it's like the fairest. I don't know how it's reading on camera, but it's a pretty nice color on me. It's got enough peachiness to it that it's not pulling too orange, but it's also not pulling really green, which can also be something that happens when, I don't know, I mean, it's not necessarily like a bronzer is the wrong shade, it's just the wrong shade for me because you know, some people have, like the paler that they get like a very, a more believable tan from something that has green in it. I am just not one of those people. And so a lot of times when it comes to formulas like this that are like able to be sheared out and don't have a whole lot of opacity to them, it is more about choosing your undertone than it is about choosing the shade that would appear to be the light or the medium or the dark shade. I never moved y'all in. Should I move you in? Sorry, my camera died and then I realized I never moved you in. Let's move y'all in. As I was saying, it is equally important from a brand's, you know, conception standpoint to make a line that has not just like saturations for everybody, but also undertones for everybody. And sometimes your undertone is going to be in something that's a little more saturated than you might expect. And that is why I bought all of them. But as it turns out, they kind of nailed my shade in terms of like being a, you know, pretty medium saturated kind of thing that's very easy to work with. It's what I expected it to be. And also just being the right undertones. So that is what is that one called again? Flair looks like. Remember it, khaki Flair, you know, like they have on their suspenders at TGI Fridays. Now that's spelled a different way. And then the other thing that I was just like really excited about was to try Volt because it kind of strikes me as Best Coast. This is West Coast. Where is Best Coast? It's probably out here still. Hang on. Okay, so I really fully thought that I owned Best Coast. I must have decluttered it, and there was a point on my channel where I was like, I just moved, I can hear something rattling around behind my Alex drawers, and it must be Best Coast. And I just got out a screwdriver, uninstalled the bottom drawer so that I could see what was back there, and it was some stuff, but it was not Best Coast. So just pretend you didn't know that I used to own it. I did pull some things though that I think will be relevant comparisons, and we're now going to relevantly compare those. All right, so, you know, suffice it to say, I don't own that many super deep bronzers because look at my face, why would I kind of thing. But here are all the things in my collection that I feel are relevant to compare. So this, if I can recall now, is the only, yes, the only bronzer that I own in the Tower 28 collection, and it is West Coast. West Coast. They did come out with a bunch more. I do not have them yet. These two are Melt. This is Sundown, which I always used to say was like a pretty dark, maybe is Daydreamer? That's the one. All right, let's stick Daydreamer in there. That's the one. We'll put that one at the bottom down here for the sake of some relevant comparison. Okay, so that's Sundown and Lynx from Melt Cosmetics. Then we get into these three are the bronzers from Bare Minerals. So we have Kiss of Pink, Kiss of Copper, Kiss of Rose. Then we get into the Glossier ones. So that's Flair, Ray, Heat down here, pardon my bracelet, and Volt. And then we end up with Daydreamer from Melt Cosmetics, which I've always said is kind of what I think of as a good, like, deep red undertoned shimmery bronzer, cream bronzer. And even like spread out, I would say that Volt is deeper than Daydreamer. And it's also deeper, even though it's kind of in the same idea as Kiss of Rose. So I'm actually, because I love like Kiss of Rose so much from Bare Minerals, I'm gonna use just a little bit of Volt as a blush. I'm not gonna put it directly on my skin because I don't think that I'll be able to like spread it out that well, but I'm just gonna put it on kind of a bigger brush here. See if I can get a nice bronzer effect from it. Because actually, and I think maybe I will swatch the Danessa Myricks palette as well. The Danessa Myricks Nudist palette has some really deep red undertoned browns that I feel like also lend themselves really well to giving me that believable sunburned look. And that's also, you know, meant to I mean, I assume meant to translate really, really beautifully and actually show up on dark skin. Yeah. So I used, I went, beep, you know what I mean? Like a dot of it. It is pretty intensely pigmented, the same way that Kiss of Rose is. And that was a very divisive application in that video. Some people were like, oh my God, finally, this is the best, you know, most effective, highly pigmented, actual bronzer, blush hybrid I've ever seen. It works so well on your skin. And I think a lot of people unsubscribed. They were like, I'm in over my head. I'll never like blush this much, and that's fine, you know? So yeah, I do feel like though that didn't necessarily read as blush whatsoever, even though it does have like a redder undertone. And so on me, it did just like enhance just the multi-dimensionality of like a more believable bronzer effect. So I enjoyed that very much. Like, what was I gonna do? Forgot what I was gonna do. Danessa Myricks, that's right. So this is not in any way like an anything palette specifically. It's not like, oh, it's all blushes or oh, it's all bronzers. It's just like these really beautiful colors, right? That's Danessa Myricks' thing. And she leaves it open to interpretation depending on the texture that you're wanting. Like, you know, what part of your face you want to use it on. So these don't have names, but they are like the three deepest shades in that palette. And I would say they're right in line with like Volt and Daydreamer. Can you focus? Yeah, so those bottom five are like the deepest ones that I own. And I would say that Volt is like right in there with those in terms of just depth and richness, not necessarily like, you know, a whole menagerie of options if like red isn't your undertone and you're really dark skinned. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, you can definitely see that my shade does have, yeah, you can see that it has a little bit more opacity. She almost like reads like a mineral makeup or something, the way that it has like a blurring effect. You can see it's got coverage, I guess is what I'm saying. The next deeper shade is like so warm, not orange, but very, very warm, like copper warm. You know, I guess you could argue that as your skin tone gets deeper and you're trying to accommodate, you know, several different undertones and stuff, like these two are kind of the better options. This one's not super, super milky, but this one's probably gonna be too milky for a lot of people, you know, use it as a liquid eyeshadow kind of thing. Is it ideal? No. Could they have come out twice as many shades? Yes. You I definitely think so. So I'm now going to finish this makeup look real quick, and I will just kind of zoom through that. Up online. So full disclosure, I've been a Glossier rep slash, you know, affiliate since like 2017. This is something that I found out about right alongside you guys. I didn't get any advance notice, and I did buy these with a credit that they give you every month as a rep. They give you $30 credit, but these were like 80 bucks total, so I just went towards that. Okay, so Solar Paint. What it is, a weightless bronzer designed to capture the warm glow you get from spending a day in the sunshine. Why it's special? We wanted skin to look like it was actually kissed by the sun. Each shade has a touch of luminosity from light reflecting pearls and a thoughtful balance of warmth and dimension, so your bronzer looks just as natural in broad daylight as it does in your bathroom mirror. The almost whipped gel cream is infused with desert milk, trademark, a micro emulsion of plant oils and extracts like jojoba and aloe to condition and nourish, and has a natural effect finish that blends seamlessly with the heat of your fingers. So it works fine with your fingers. I never have the patience to blend something with my fingers, ever. Good to know, buildable, enhancing, easy, vegan, and cruelty-free, dermatologist tested, formulated without fragrance. 100% said it blends seamlessly into skin in a clinical trial. So they are $20 a piece, and I don't think that they do a duo or anything. No, there's no duos or anything. It kind of would be cool because to me, it's sort of like the Bare Minerals bronzer in the sense that, yes, certain ones seem to be kind of intended around the idea of being deeper or lighter, like for light skin or dark skin, but I think that depending on your undertones, you could get more use out of any of them. So like, for example, the very, very golden one, I would say the second lightest, is Ray. Okay, I'll go ahead and describe the shades to you actually. Flair is a light neutral bronze with gold pearl for fair to light skin tones. So they do have different shifts. Ray is a medium warm bronze with gold pearl for light to medium skin tones. Heat is a rich brown bronze with gold pearl for tan deep skin tones. And Volt is a deep red bronze with copper pearl for deep rich skin tones. So yeah, I think that I can't really wear like the really gold one, which is called Ray, because my undertones would clash with it. Like I've put it on and it's very orange on me. And I would say that dark skin tones probably can't wear Flair, because Flair is, as you saw, it has the opacity behind it where it's going to probably show up a little bit milky on really dark skin. And that's like not probably the look you're going for, I'm just guessing. And then Volt, you were able to see, like, I could wear that because it comes off as like a red tan and it is translucent enough that it, I don't know, that it just like works on my skin really nicely, but like in the tiniest amount. And then that Heat shade, it's rich brown bronze. They don't really talk about the actual undertone of that one, which is interesting. Like rich is more of like a description of like the intensity of the pigment more so than the temperature. I'm gonna look at the reviews. Okay, so they do have some sets that you can combine these with, but they are sort of assuming that you would only buy one shade. So there's the Solar Paint and Lid Star Duo, and there's the Makeup Set on Vacation, which is a mascara, cloud paint, and a bronzer. Okay, I wanna read the like low ratings. I don't see a point to this. I'm fair skinned and don't usually go for bronzer, but I give this a try. I don't see a point to this product for someone with fair skin. It fades extremely fast. That was the lowest published review. So that was the only like issue that I ran into, was when I really piled these up the way that, like, you know, I have been wont to do in the past, and then combined it with concealer on top of it and everything, like did my makeup backwards kind of thing. The same way that I did today, but I ended up with a lot of makeup on my face, and then when I went out in the sun, it was a very like skippy, gappy, you know, invitation to disrupt kind of thing. And, you know, with like normal-ish hands, you know, not super clean, not super dirty, like, you know, it's gonna pick up a little bit, just a little. It's a little bit disruptible, but like anything that comes out as a liquid like that and doesn't 100% dry, like it's got all of those like lovely emollient oils in it and everything, it's gonna do that. It's just a matter of the products that you put it on with. By the way, I just started a treatment that's like doing, you know, helping with my pigmentation. And so if you see peely skin, that's why. But, you know, this is not an Auric Glow Lust, for example. This is not meant to be worn all over the face and, you know, help your makeup to go on more smoothly and things like that. I feel like it is much more supposed to be just exactly what it is. I just didn't want anybody to get it twisted. I kind of did wear it like that yesterday, almost like a primer. I wouldn't recommend it. But if we're talking final thoughts, which you know, we should at this point. I really like it. I think that it's very pretty. I think that it is right in line with Glossier's usual intention of creating hero products that are a little bit different, but different for a reason. And sometimes they make things that are different just for the sake of being different, and they don't really thrill me. This is just different enough. It's comparable to things that I already have in my collection from a color, temperature, intensity standpoint, and also from an application standpoint, but I feel like they really got where they were going with it because it is very agreeable. It's agreeable to being worn straight on top of the skin, to a skin tint, to on top of powder, things like that. Like, it's just a pretty darned easy product to approach. It's beginner friendly. I would, and this is just me personally, recommend using a brush just because it does want to dry down a little bit. And so you have more ability to work with it while it's wet if you use it with a brush. But, you know, some people are more comfortable with their fingers, and like that's awesome for you. I am so impatient, I can't do it. I think it's beautiful. I think the shade specifically is beautiful. I think it would add coverage to darker skin tones kind of thing. And so it's not completely inclusive in that sense, but I do think that they draw those delineations for a reason on their website that are like, this is for this skin tone, this is for this skin tone. But I do want to, like, you know, invite you to broaden your mind a little bit and think about, like, maybe it's just a color that would look nice on my skin regardless of who it's intended for necessarily. And I do hope that, you know, for that deep skin tone, like, not every deep skin tone turns red in the sun kind of thing. Like, that's not necessarily like answering everybody's needs, the same way that this being a good match for my light skin tone, you know, that doesn't necessarily meet the needs of every light skin toned person's bronzer needs. That sentence was like a big circle, but regardless, it works beautifully for me. I love it. I'm going to continue using it. I like the texture. I like the price. I like the usability, the user friendliness. I just think it's a really good product. But just like pretty much every bronzer line that I have ever tried, like, there are bronzer lines that are going to have better bronzers, and not just for specific skin lightnesses or darknesses, but for different undertones and like the cross section of your undertones and your skin's lightness or richness or whatever. And I've found that to be true pretty much across the board. You know, even in like the most inclusive ranges, there still will be people who feel left out of that, and rightly so. And I also feel like bronzer is definitely one of those things that for a long time people were like, bronzer, you get one shade. shade, you know, and then 2 shades was like groundbreaking. And then finally everybody was like, you do understand that this is as unique as a foundation, right? And so, you know, until brands are putting out bronzers in a full line of like foundation shades, basically, somebody's going to probably be left out at some point. But, you know, thank goodness that's why there are so many brands out there, so many different textures and stuff. But I hope that this at least helped to illuminate like who probably could find something for them. To reiterate, the fairest shade I feel like is a little bit opaque to translate to everybody, but it is nice and neutral for someone like me. The next 3, the other 3, go, you know, very, very gold, very, very warm. The next one goes, I would say like medium goldy red-ish. And then that deep shade goes red to plum almost. And if those don't work for you, then these won't work for you. If these do, if those are the shades, if like you were hoping for one of those, then it will work for you. So yeah, guys, that's my review on these, on the solar paint. Is that what it's called? Solar paint. I do a terrible job of optimizing the SEO by mentioning the name of the product a whole lot. So Glossier, solar paint, solar paint, solar paint. Yeah, if you did enjoy this, give it a thumbs up. If you want to keep hanging out with me on this channel, hit the button down below and subscribe. I would love it if you guys did. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with me. What is happening here? I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. I'm a little brain dead today, fam.